Hey guys, so this is the video in which I answer all the questions that I was asked in last time. And I actually wasn't asked a lot of questions, but I was asked one very interesting one by my one YouTube subscriber. Uh, he asked me to share my diagnosis story with him, and I'm not sure if he meant my bipolar diagnosis story or like overall. So I'm just going to share everything. And he also asked me to share about my relationships. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to start off with the diagnosis. So basically, 3 years ago I was diagnosed with lupus, and that came about because one day I just woke up with pain all over my body. I couldn't move. I was in excruciating pain. I remember crying, screaming, and they took me to the doctors. They said it was an infection. But I remember thinking, this is an infection, this is something else. My grandma had rheumatoid arthritis, and so I thought that that's what it was. And I told the doctor, and she said, well, if this doesn't go away or if this happens again, you should get these labs done. And it did. It happened again about a week later. And I went and got the labs done. They came back positive. It was in ANA, so it meant that I had something autoimmune, but I wasn't sure what. There's a wide range of autoimmune diseases, so now we had to see what it was that I had. And I thought I had arthritis, but, I needed to go see a doctor to confirm that. And so one of my uncles actually is a doctor, and he told me to mention to my doctor that my aunt has lupus. And so we mentioned it to my doctor, and he said, oh, well, you need to get these tests done. And so I did. I went and I got them. I came back 3 days later, and he said, you have lupus. It was probably the most heartbreaking words that I've heard my entire life, because I've seen my aunt go through it. I have a friend who also has lupus, and it's just awful. It's an awful disease. So I was fine for a few months, and then it started to attack my kidneys, and they had to be more aggressive with my treatment. And when they began to be more aggressive with my treatment, I didn't react very well to it. I started getting chemo, and it intoxicated my body, and I went into multiple organ system failure, and I was in the ICU for about 4 or 5 days. The doctors thought I was going to die, and I didn't, thankfully. But basically that's how it's been, on and off, for 3 years. And so, more about my mental history. One of the times that I was hospitalized, it was in June and July of 2015. I was hospitalized for about a month and a half, almost 2 months, and they actually moved me to Dallas. I'm from El Paso, if you didn't know. So they moved me to Dallas, and I was so depressed, and one night I just lost it. I had a psychotic break, and they had to sedate me because I was threatening to kill myself and do all these crazy things. And eventually they diagnosed me with severe anxiety and depression. And I started seeing a therapist then, and they put me on Zoloft, which is for depression. It's an antidepressant, and I got off of it because I hated the way it made me feel, but I still kept on going to therapy, and I always thought that there was something wrong with me, that there was something that they kind of missed, and so I kind of pushed for myself to get diagnosed, and I decided to go get evaluated further, and there was when they told me that I was bipolar. It didn't come as a big shock to me because I'd read a lot about bipolar disease, and it made sense. It made a lot of sense to me. I realized that a lot of the things that I had done before had been because of that, and it actually took a really big weight off my shoulders, and it felt like I could finally identify myself with something. So it felt good to get that diagnosis. In terms of my relationships, I think both the lupus and the bipolar and, you know, every other disease that I have really, really affected my relationships, whether they be romantically or just regular relationships. I don't go out too much because I'm constantly tired. I always want to sleep. I don't like going out too late. And so it's hard for me. And also, with bipolar, when you're in a relationship, it's hard for them to understand. If they've never seen someone who has bipolar disease, they think you're kind of like making excuses, and you're not, you know. Sometimes you're depressed and sometimes you're in a manic phase and you just want to go out and do anything and you think you're on top of the world, and then all of a sudden you crash. And so it's been really, really hard for me to be in a good and stable relationship. But I guess time will tell, and eventually I'll find someone who understands. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. Sorry, I get like really emotional talking about this, but that's just how I am. So anyways, that's what I wanted to talk about. Anyways, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask me and I'll answer them. Or if you have any more questions about this, if I could elaborate on something, I can go ahead and do that. Alright, so I just realized that I kept on calling bipolar disease a disease instead of a disorder. It's not a disease, it's a disorder, by the way. So I just wanted to clarify that before moving on. And then also, I wanted to say, I kind of ended on a bad note the other video, but I wanted to say there is hope. There certainly is people, or there are people who understand, and there are people who are willing to be in a relationship with someone who is bipolar and with someone who has lupus. And I have met good guys who are definitely, you know, worth it, I guess. And I wanted to encourage you guys, if you have any of these diseases or disorders, you know, there is hope. I was in a very, very bad place a couple years ago, and now I'm so much happier. Like, no joke, it's like a complete shift, you know. And now that I've started taking my meds, I'm actually on Abilify, in case you wanted to know. I'm on Abilify, and I take clonazepam. I actually take it for seizures, but I know it's also for anxiety. And it's just been a complete shift for me. My mood swings aren't as bad anymore. I tend to be a lot nicer to people around me, and I'm just a better person throughout. And so there is hope. You know, I just wanted to say that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, if you have any more questions, feel free to ask me, and I will try to get to them. All right, goodbye.